Hi, I'm James Gardner, host of Your History, Your Story, a podcast for anyone who loves hearing fascinating tales about remarkable people, intriguing topics, and significant historical events. Our hope is to inspire you to uncover and share your history and your story. In this episode of Your History, Your Story, our guest is Julie Kresge, the Marketing and Media Coordinator for Quiet Valley Living Historical Farm in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. For more than 30 years, my family has created wonderful memories visiting Quiet Valley's Old Time Christmas program, an annual tradition that truly captures the warmth and spirit of the season. That's why we're especially honored to share the story of this remarkable historic site. Quiet Valley is a working historical farm that transports you to the 19th century and even earlier through its many year-round programs. In addition to Old Time Christmas, which includes a live nativity, visitors can enjoy Farm Animal Frolic, Spooky Days on the Farm, Harvest Festival, and many other interesting and exciting activities. A visit to Quiet Valley feels like you are stepping into another time. You can walk among the barns and fields, meet costumed interpreters, and even visit a one-room schoolhouse where you can sing songs and experience what it was like to be in school more than 130 years ago. Join us as we speak with Julie about the fascinating history of Quiet Valley, a farm with roots reaching back to the 1700s, when its earliest residents included a former Hessian soldier from the American Revolution, and learn how this special place continues to bring the past to life for visitors of all ages. I'd now like to welcome Julie Kresge to our show. Welcome, Julie.
Hi there.
It's so good to have you. And we're going to talk today about a place that's near and dear to my heart and the heart of my family. It's Quiet Valley Living Historical Farm. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and where it is, Julie?
Sure. We're located in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. We're in Hamilton Township, which is one of the oldest townships here in Monroe County. And we are a living historical farm, which is exactly what it means. It is a working farm. It has been a working farm since the 1760s when it was initially purchased and settlement on it began. And so it has been a continuous farm from 1760 to the late 1950s when it was purchased with a couple things in mind, and the people who purchased it realized that the things that made it a historical farm site were still here. And so it just made sense then to turn it into the museum. So we've been a working living historical farm museum since July of 1963.
Well, that's an awful long time. And my family and I have been going there since, I think probably the 1990s at Christmas time. But before we jump ahead to that, I want to jump back.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the 18th century and who were the original owners of the property that's now the historical farm?
So the original family that settled here were, sometimes you'll see it written Depper, sometimes you'll see it written Zepper. It depends on the records as you're looking at ships manifests and things like that. It's written different ways, but they've traced the gentleman to Philadelphia. He came here with his wife and a daughter. And so from Philadelphia, they moved their way north here into Hamilton Township and started developing this into their home and their farm. And the original farmhouse is still here. So for the first year or so, they lived in an embankment house. Basically, they dug into the ground and put up whitewashed walls inside, a large walk-in hearth to do their cooking. Some of the records have it that they may have actually lived in there for the first year with their animals because they didn't have other structures built for shelter for them. And that family who came here then came from the Palatine area in Germany, which a lot of immigrant families did, and a lot of them settled here in the Pennsylvania, like the southeastern Pennsylvania and up this direction because it was familiar to home. It had the same sort of growing seasons and things, so they were really familiar how to work the land in this area because of its familiarity to their home.
Now, these are German-speaking people, right?
It is a dialect, yep, a dialect of German.
Hmm. And do we know why they would have left their homeland?
Yeah, there was a lot of strife going on in Germany at that time. There were feudal issues, there were meaning you did a lot of work, but you didn't get a lot back for it because, you owed things to other people who were in charge of your land. And so between that and there was continuous skirmishes and wars and conflicts. And so a lot of them decided they were just going to leave. And with that, they did end up in very similar communities. So when the family came here, there were already German settlers here. So you kind of wanted to be where your religion was familiar, where the language was familiar, where the customs were familiar. And that's why that group started leaving Germany, and they left starting earlier than the 1760s. They were already leaving there, in the earlier part of the 1700s because they wanted to get away from, the chaos that was going on in Germany at that time.
That is very interesting history. I guess there's so many different people were migrating for different reasons, weren't they?
Right.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. Now, Julie, the original house that this family built, I know there's a lot of old structures on the farm. Is that house still there, or was it somewhere that it's no longer, there?
Nope. The house is still here. So that bank house that I was talking about ended up being what we call the cellar kitchen now. And so as the family extended and the kids were born, the daughter that the Zeppers came here with ended up getting married. They stayed here on the farm and family grew. And so they built a log structure on top of that original embankment house. So that gave them another story and a loft above that so they could expand a little bit more. So because it stayed in that family for 5 generations, somebody in the next generation just took it over. There are little additions here and there, but the main being the first part of it, which was 1770-ish, and then what we call the new kitchen, which was the 1880s. Legend has it that the last family, the parents that took over last, because it was 1880, the new wife was very upset with having to cook in a cellar hearth. It's a lot of work. It's backbreaking work. And she insisted she wanted to have, new modern kitchen like everyone else. And so the addition was added on the house as well as this big black cook stove. The original cook stove is still in the house as well. So everything is still there pretty much like it was left.
That's the place that I've been inside, and it is so cool to now know that that was actually the original house of this family that settled there. That's one of my favorite places when I go to visit, and you just get this sense of history sitting there. It's
Absolutely.
amazing. Now, Julie, I understand in the history that there's the American Revolutionary War sort of touches this family because isn't there a son-in-law who was a Hessian?
That is correct. So when the Depp family came over, they had their daughter with them that we know of. There may have been others, but we know definitely of Catherine who came along, came with her parents. And she eventually did marry a Hessian soldier. And so once, as we know about Hessian fighting at that time, you were hired by the British to come fight. Often those people didn't have families of their own. There really was nothing for them to do but become a hired fighter. And in this case, while he fought, once the revolution was over, he had nothing to go back to. And so after they met, they got along and it was familiar to him as well. So he's here with a German speaking family who are going to a German predominant church nearby, which is Christ Hamilton Church, and that is still standing and still conducting services today. So for all of those reasons, it made sense for his name was Johann Ludwig Meyer, and it made sense for him and was comfortable for him to be here in this situation. And so once they married and their family continued to grow, that's why the house continued to grow.
Yeah, I love that story. I actually have a sister-in-law who traced her roots back to a Hessian soldier because, as you pointed out, some of these soldiers, when the war was over, they either, they dispersed, they didn't go back, back to Europe, they stayed here. So I guess there's plenty of instances though, but it sounds like this is a neat fit because of the background and where these people were
Right,
from, right?
right.
Yeah. So the family grows and continues in this form, but I want to go back to the family that decided to make the Quiet Valley Living Historical Farm a museum. And you mentioned 1963. That must have been kind of a big decision because they could have sold the land off for more
Correct.
money and stuff like that. What was that process like?
So what happened, they ended up, they were actually only the third family that owned the property. So that first family owned it for 5 generations. It was sold in 1913, and that family owned it until they sold it. And it was the late 50s. It was like 1956 or 7. And the father of the founding family of the museum was a soil scientist. And so he ended up coming here to do some studies on the soil, and he fell in love, as we all do when we walk onto the property. But he was like, this place is so great. Are you interested in selling it? And of course, the initial response from the owner was, I'm going to die here. And he said, okay, well, if that changes, you let me know. And so ultimately, he did die, not here in the hospital close by, but he left his wife here. Now, remember, this is the late 50s. She was here with no amenities, no running water, no electricity, no telephone. And at this point, they were, older. And they had one son. He had joined the Marines. He was stationed in California. So he wasn't here. And she was basically here on this site all by herself. And so ultimately she got sick. And when she got sick and ended up in the hospital, her son came home, obviously to help take care of her. And he was like, Mom, you know what? You're going to go back to California with me. Are those people still interested? And so they made a phone call, and the Wicks family, who were, the originals for the museum, they came out and said, this is it. And yeah, we're really interested in it. And so the spearhead really was Alice Wicks, who we all call Graham. We still call Graham. Alice has passed quite a few years now. And I want to say at least 15, if not more. But she was the spearhead. And so she started out, once they had gotten the property, they thought, hey, we could develop it. We could put some houses in here. And then because it was so pristine in the way that it was left, truly like it's kind of a blessing that there wasn't anything done to upgrade it. Walking into it was like walking into it, and it was 1860, like it hadn't changed. And the only thing that had changed a little was the people who had it in between the founding family and when the Wicks family bought it, turned it into a boarding house. So they added some walls that were just small temporary walls. However, so the Wicks family had it, and they started having picnics here because why not? What a cool place to bring your friends to have a picnic. And because it was so historical, and because this house was still here, and because the barn was here, and it just carries the energy that is this place, their friends started coming in costume because wow, that's fun. We're going to go have a picnic and we're going to do it in historical costume. It just kind of like it was so organic in the way that it happened, and all of a sudden they, kind of connected it all and said, we have all this original stuff. We have all of these original, farm equipment and all this original furniture and things that are in the house. And we have everything here to start a museum. And one of the great quotes that I got from Sue Euler, who is Graham Wicks's daughter, one of my favorite quotes from Sue is she said, Mom always said, like, every time we go to visit a museum, it's about somebody who was rich and famous. some affluent person, and that's not how everybody else lived. So I would really like for people to be able to come and learn about how everyone else lived. And so it just was kind of serendipity that it really rolled out the way it did. So it was a privately run from the time it opened in 1963 until the early 1970s, when they realized running it privately was a difficult task for sure. And at that point, then it became part of like an umbrella, like a friends group, and those people all donated toward it and kept it running. And then it became a nonprofit, and it's been a nonprofit since. So they did have it a couple years from, the late 50s until 1960 when it opened as the private museum, but then it took about 10 years to flip it over and open it as more of a supported and nonprofit museum.
Well, thank goodness it did go through
Yes.
that metamorphosis, because it is such a wonderful place to visit. I just want to back up in the history a bit. The original owners and the son-in-law and the daughter, those folks, are they buried nearby?
Some of the parts of the family would be in Christ Hamilton Church Cemetery. Some of them may be over in Schaefer Schoolhouse. Some we don't know. So, for example, the first family, the Depper family, we're not really sure where Mr. Depper's like, we don't know. There's no record of it. Not that it's not out there somewhere, but we haven't found that at all yet. So, but as far as the family members, especially the ones that took over the farm, they're all somewhere buried nearby.
Right, I sound like a ghoul, but you're a history lover like I am, and these things interest me because that's kind of where they were plugged in, the church that they went to, the community that they
Yeah,
were involved in, and you see these memorials to these just ordinary farmers and people who made the farm go and raised
yeah,
families and did all that stuff and worked hard and they did life. And I think you said about a lot of museums and things are about famous people, but it's so fascinating to actually look at how the ordinary person lived. And actually, they were extraordinary people. What they did, they came from
absolutely.
Europe and all that, but they had normal, like ordinary lives. They had to get a living out of the soil and raise
Right.
families and the diseases they dealt with and hard work and all that. But I think um, you mentioned the lady who, the recent one who bought the house at the
Mrs. Wicks.
Mrs. Wicks.
Yeah,
Sorry, Mrs.
Alice
Wicks.
Wicks.
I think she was on one of the tours when we first started going 30
I'm
years ago.
sure.
We sat around a big bonfire and she told some stories, and I'm almost positive that was her. And that was wonderful. But let's talk about the museum now. This is probably a good point for me to say that our daughter, Kelly, and my daughter, our oldest daughter, was in about fourth or fifth grade, and she came home with a permission slip one day. We live in northern New Jersey, not too
Yeah.
far from
Not
you,
too far. No.
and it was to go to this living farm, Quiet Valley, and I believe it was for your fall festival.
Okay.
I may be wrong, but I believe it was. It wasn't the Christmas one, but she went out there and she said she had such a good time, and she brought back something else that said that they had this Christmas program. And it was the Christmas program that we ended up going to, and we had such a great time, and we've been coming ever since. And it's 30 plus years that we've been going. But let's talk about some of the activities and events that you have at Quiet Valley. Can you take us through some of your main events?
Absolutely, absolutely. So right now we're doing school tours, which is where a lot of young people kind of find out about us. They come here with their school group, and that is a big event for us. We have 5,500 school kids this spring coming through here. So that is not one of our personal, big time events, but I need to give that a big nod because it takes a lot of organization and just cooperation to get that many kids through here. And for many, that starts it. we have to go back again. We have to go back this summer. We have to go back this spring. So let's talk about what we're doing coming up. Every May is our Farm Animal Frolic for 2 different weekends. The first weekend focuses on sheep shearing. So we have traditional sheep shearing here that weekend, and we do other demonstrations. But with the wool process, you get to see how the sheep is sheared. It goes right from being sheared to the wool being washed, to the wool being carded, to the wool being spun, dyed, and turned into a shawl, all during the event. And along with that, of course, we've got a Civil War encampment during that Farm Animal Frolic. And that is one of the 2 weekends that the Civil War encampment comes in. We have demonstrations set up. We have a garden plant sale. So a lot of people are putting in their plants, and we have starter plants here that one of our founders, that's what he does. He starts the starter plants, and they're for sale here as well. And the big draw, especially for the kids at that time, is all the newborn animals. We have all the spring animals are here at this point. So little bunnies and little goats and piglets, and there's sheep due as we speak. So we should have some lambs. So, that covers a lot of May. And that's really our celebration of spring and growth. And at that point, we go back to school tours until we hit the summer. And summer opening day is just opening day. We're open Tuesday through Saturday, all throughout the summer from mid-June all the way to Labor Day. So people can come in and it's quiet because it's, midweek, and they can just tour and stop and take it all in. And some smaller events through the middle of that, which I'm not going to get into now because our next big event that, you and I are talking about here would be when we get into Harvest Festival. And Harvest Festival comes around in October, and it's Columbus Day weekend. So when it's Columbus Day weekend, it's Harvest Festival time. And this place is wow. It is every aspect of historical self-sufficient living you would want to see. We've got people blacksmithing, and we've got people making scrapple, people making griddle cakes, and a Civil War encampment set up, and people dyeing wool, and people spinning and weaving, and it is just amazing to watch it because it is the culmination of a year on the farm. And honestly, when you make that correlation between Harvest Festival and the energy that was required for that time period historically while they were harvesting and bringing everything in and processing things and hanging things to dry and whatever, there's a definite connection with the amount of energy that happens in Harvest Festival when you look at historically what happened, during that time period. And so by the time we get to the end of October, we have Spooky Days. It is our nod to the fun of Halloween, but keeping it historical. So we have a history murder mystery is the best way to describe it. We have two just lovely, lovely, forever, longtime volunteers here. They're sisters, and they come up with these ideas for these historical murder mysteries. And so every story is involved with people that are on the farm. You're going to go around as a visitor and visit these people in costume, like we normally are, because they're telling you, I just don't understand why he did this because he was always, it can't be him. And as the visitors, you go as a group from one person in costume to another, guided by a guide who allows you the time to ask that person and interrogate that person to see if you can figure out what really happened and who really was the guilty party. So it's just a nice, fun nod because we get to step. I don't even want to say we step out of costume a little because we don't, but we step out of our roles a little bit in doing this. And we follow that up with a couple more weeks of school tours after that, and then we get ready for old time Christmas. And it is just the piece of the season. And as you know, you've been here and it's quiet. And depending when you come, or depending if you're lucky, you might get a little snow on top of it all while you're walking around listening to carols and a live nativity. And there truly is nothing like it. those who get to see it really truly are blessed. And we end your old time Christmas tour with a goodie up in the Ed Center. And we've got the shop, so people start doing some of their Christmas shopping up there. And that is pretty much the end of our season. And we shut down then after that and start planning for next year.
Yeah, it is incredible. And when you talk about school tours and things, now I love history, and I've had the privilege of being a substitute teacher in my retirement to elementary school kids. And a lot of them really are interested in hearing about history.
They are.
And you can tell them stories and things like that, but there's nothing better than letting them have like a hands-on experience, a picture where they can see it happening. And what you're doing there, sheep shearing. I mean, I guess you could go on YouTube,
You could.
but it's not the same, is it?
It's not the same as, as the opportunity to say, can I see what a clump of that looks like after it's sheared? And you're making sure that you're letting them know this is the sheep's getting a haircut. He's not getting hurt. He's going to be fine, and he's going to be a lot cooler as the warm months come along. And yeah, do you want to, see what the wool feels like after it has been sheared off the sheep? And that really is the big thing, to be able to make that connection historically for kids. We have a program where we take animals to a school. If a school calls and says, hey, we really want to learn about sheep, and we do have a smaller sheep here, a smaller ewe, named Annie. And the original one was Molly, so we called it the Molly the Sheep program. And Molly and now Annie go in the car with the interpreter to a school, and that she gets to go into the school as the kids, learn about how important a sheep was, on a farm, and what it gave the farm family. So being here on site for so many kids makes it so much more real. It explains it to them better. It's not abstract then, it's concrete once they come here and they can really see what's happening and get a better idea of what it took for these people to, to continue to make it year after year after year.
Better than any book really that you could read.
Absolutely.
Yeah, particularly for kids. I mean, obviously I love books. I love books, and but being able to see things in action, and a Civil War encampment. I mean, for kids to see, like, what did the soldiers wear? What did they do when they weren't fighting? Most of their time was spent in encampment, right? But what
Yeah.
were the uniforms, the wool uniforms, and the muskets they had, the rifles they had, and the tent, and what it looked like, and how they killed time. It I would love to come up and see one of those encampments, because that would be a lot of fun. But I think just even for adults, just to see these things and absorb it, and we're so removed in our lives from the simplicity of those people who lived back in the 18th, 19th century. They were hard lives, but in many ways
Yeah.
they were different, so many ways different than our lives today. And we've got a lot of stress, and we're bombarded with information and technology and all this, that, and the other. But for the kids and adults and anybody who's interested in learning history, or just to sort of step out of the 21st century for a little while and take a break,
Yeah.
wonderful place,
Yes.
the programs. There's so many that we haven't seen. If I could share with you, I mentioned it was over 30 years ago that we started
Yeah.
coming to the Christmas program. And we had a couple of experiences there that were just so nice. Well, they're all nice, but there was one year, part of the Christmas tour is the schoolhouse, the one-room schoolhouse, which is near the end of the tour.
Mhm.
I remember it was a cold night, and we always had a big group from our family. We started bringing friends, and we were chattering our teeth a little bit, but we went in and we were singing. There's a group you had in that was a few ladies from a choir, a nearby church choir, and this one woman sang "Oh Holy Night," and it was the most inspiring, emotional version of "Oh Holy Night" I have ever heard. To this day, that includes Josh Groban and
Wow.
tremendously talented people. But this woman just that tugged the heartstrings, brought me to tears. And then the family, we were filing out, and as we filed out, it was snowing outside.
It is magic. That event often has made me just kind of stop in my tracks and go, wow,
Mm.
I get to see and do this. And that says a lot, when something stops you in your tracks like that. So
Okay.
I understand how you felt when you came out and it was that experience and that sound. I think there's so many of your senses that coming here touches, especially if you're coming to an event. You're smelling the wood smoke. You're eating, what we have on tap, which is generally very farm-based type foods that would be here, that you would eat. You're hearing the sounds of things that you don't normally hear. And really, like I said, it touches so many of your senses beyond the visual. It's stunning to pull it all together.
Oh, it is. And the other thing is like you look up some nights there were nights where it was just cold and it wasn't snowing. And I looked up and the stars, I live in North Jersey and sometimes you just can't see the stars.
You little
Even
a
on
little light, a little, what do they call that? Light pollution, where it kind of wipes out the stars a little.
yeah, but we looked up and just the stars and it was
Mhm.
quiet. I just sort of pictured in my mind the original family back in 1700 something tucked away in their little house and the fire roaring and having conversations and your imagination can go wild, particularly if you're a person who loves history and
Oh, absolutely.
it's just great. Now, tell me about you. How did you get involved in Quiet Valley Living Historical Farm?
Well, I actually was involved years and years ago because it was fun and because I've always been a history buff. And when I was a little girl, I didn't know there was a thing like Disney. I knew there were a lot of Civil War battlefields because, that's where my brother and my parents took us. My dad, in order to stop us from being bored, would drop some dimes and nickels and things, and we swore every historical site was filled with change. And so it just got into your blood that way, like it wasn't a summer unless you hit a historical site. So time went on and I got to be, in my 20s, and it made sense to come over and volunteer for things. And my mom at that point was involved in different aspects of it as well. So she's like, why don't you come on over? Why don't you, sign up? You can volunteer with me. So that was, like I said, in my 20s, which was forever ago. So life happened and we had kids and summertime came around and wow, we have summer camps. There are still summer camps here to this day for kids. And so let's sign the kids up for summer camp. This will be really fun. In costume, running around the farm, making things and making food and working with our hands. Yep, we're going to do that. So that would have been through the 90s. The first time my daughter was here, she was 6 weeks old. I was in costume. She was in a basket with a quilt and a bonnet, because that's how you had to carry her around, kind of. And having the kids here in the summer worked in our schedules. I taught for 32 years. And it was always kind of a joke, tongue in cheek that I'd be like, one day I'm going to retire and I'm going to just volunteer in the gift shop. It'll be fun. So, anyway, time went on. And my daughter realized here on site when she was about 14 that she wanted to do museum education. And so it just clicked that strongly with her. She said, I would love to be a teacher and I still want to teach, but I want to do it hands-on, which is what you and I were talking about earlier, how that hands-on connects. She said, and I want my students to be 3 to 93. Like there are ways to really reach out to everybody. And time went on, child grew up, became a history student. And so her undergrad was history. Then she went off to grad school and did the museum work. And we figured she would go off somewhere up north and she came back here. Literally here. It was kind of like a total just giving it back. And so with her being on site, pulled me back on site more than I had been in a long time because she's like, Mom, we need a volunteer here, we need somebody there. And teaching, I had the summer to do that. And summer camps that I mentioned before, hey, can you do the summer camp this week? Sure, I'll put that camp together for you because, that's what you needed that teaching background to really put that camp together and know how to organize it and make it fly. So it was just kind of like, well, we're here. We're like, you're here and I'm here to support whatever you want to do. And then I retired from teaching and then I came in and volunteered here in the shop, like I said I was going to do, and then it turned into my job. So I am here now doing this part of it, and I also do the marketing and the media development as well. And to be able to get the word about who we are and what we do out, to the public is really just a blessing of it. It's almost a calling, like for people to be able to come in and get an appreciation for things that prior they only knew about from reading a book. I too, like you, love books, but when you step foot in the scene of what could be a book, it's a really heartfelt, amazing experience.
Well, you are right where you're supposed to be,
It
Julia.
seems that way.
I think that's wonderful. And Kelly, my wife Kelly, and I have been wanting to do something about Quiet Valley since we've been doing this podcast 5 years now because it's a place that we've just loved, and we wanted to kind of give back to get the word out about this place. There's actually another story about our experience with the old time Christmas. We actually one year we had we put it out there to people at our church to see if anybody wanted to join us and go out there. And I think some schedules got a little mixed up at the time, but people ended up going out, but not exactly the same time.
Yes.
And that was it. We didn't hear much more about it from some other folks, some friends of ours, and some people from the church. And then many years later, we happened to be at a memorial service for one of our members. And during that service, I think it was one of the children, were talking about fond family memories. And what do you think came up as a fond family memory?
Isn't that
Quiet
something?
Valley, that when they did go, they liked it so much that they kept going back.
Yep. Absolutely.
Weren't going
That's
with us, but they were going with their family.
with
And
their families.
mm,
And it's when I have, guests come in here and they pop in the shop and they say, wow, the first time I was here was like 40 years ago. And these are my kids. And they're 16 and 18 now. And I'm like, yep, that's what it's all about. That's what it's about. This became almost a refuge for you to come in here and really touch your roots again and, take a big breath again. And I really enjoy, as much as things have changed sort of behind the scene and how we organize things and set up things and people being able to say, gosh, it's just like I remember it. That's pretty cool.
that's
That
pretty
is,
cool.
yeah,
It
yeah.
really is. And this past Christmas when we went up there, and that's when Kelly found you there,
Yes.
and that's how we were able to connect and do this. My youngest daughter brought with her, she and her husband brought our two youngest grandchildren. They were 2 and 1, and we're thinking, how's this going to work out? I'm quite sure it's going to work out, but we'll see what happens. Do you know that the two of them were mesmerized by what was going on because there were things moving, things happening. They
Things they could hear.
hear things they could see. They saw people in costume. What's that? They heard people singing. They heard us singing in the schoolhouse with the bells and everything like that. And the animals. They saw the animals in the live nativity scene. And then they saw the Belschnickel. I'll leave that open for people to
To
explore.
come and see what the Belschnickel is all about.
It's great. They love them, and there might have been some candy involved there too,
There
which
is
didn't
candy
hurt.
involved. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, but that was so much fun. Now, as far as people who might be interested in learning more about how they could maybe even contribute or volunteer, or even just find out about the programs that are available, what would you recommend?
I recommend going on our website. We're very conscientious about making sure that our newest events are on our website. We do have social media as well. So we have Facebook and Instagram. I want to say younger crowd. So, my daughter and some of the crew that works with her will find things every once in a while that they really find interesting to put on TikTok. Things like they were beating the ticking on the bed. So the bed is, layers of ticking. There's not a mattress. You had ticking. And so the girls were bringing it out and they were beating it. And so that was an ideal thing to do a little video of and pop up. But as far as finding dates and events and things, I number one place to look is our website always, because there's always a link there. If it's a workshop, there's a link there for you to go and sign up to it, tell you more about it, get yourself involved. We have workshops in all kinds of things, from basket making to, you know, um, folk painting to, I'm trying to think, different cooking techniques and things. So always, that's always a good place to look for those workshops. Our major events are listed on there as well. It's chronological when you get into www.quietvalley.org. You'll see it chronological as far as going in and seeing what's coming up next and what's coming up next. So if people are listening and they're like, okay, well, we're just doing old time Christmas. So what's next? Always look there because the new is at the top of the page. As you navigate through our website, you'll see areas there where you can make donations. You can sponsor an animal. So, if your grandkids fall in love with some bunnies and you want to sponsor the bunnies, it helps for their, their care and their food. So that would be the place to go to look at all of those different ways for people to become involved, volunteer, sign up for a membership. That's a real big deal because with a membership, there all summer long, you can walk in here for free. You buy your membership and you know what? We have an extra 2 hours today. Let's drive over and take some lunch over and eat at the pavilion at the farm and walk around. That's free for you as a member to come in and do that. And that's all on the website as well.
So that's www.quietvalley.org.
Yes.
Yes. So when I was preparing for this interview, Julie, I went to your website. And there are some terrific places that sometimes maybe their website's okay, but it's not great sometimes. I mean, it can be where some places they say, hey, we got it all here. You just come and you'll see it. But you've got a dynamite web page. You really do. You really hit it out of the park with that. It's so clear. The events, your calendar, the upcoming, the just past events are so clear. It's a very user-friendly website. So anybody who wants to know anything about Quiet Valley Living Historical Farm, go to that website. You'll find out. You have a very 21st century website that helps you find out what's going on.
That's what I say. It's so interesting because you can stand here and you're like, is it 1790? Is it 1860? Like it's so authentic when you stand on site. And then, you know, you walk in the gift shop. Well, I got a lot of razzing for people because we have a square terminal here. And they're like, oh, nice. Here you are in an 1820s log building in a square terminal. How does that fit? So it is disguised really well now behind a bunch of stuff. But we do have we started it last year and it's continuing this year, but we spread it out through a couple more months. So we started a plein air painting event last year, meaning artists could come onto the farm. And I am telling you, there isn't a corner that you can't turn that you just never saw it before, and the light's hitting it just right. And now, today, it looks like wow, and you'd never caught it before because that's how this farm is. It's just so we have artists coming in. Like I said, we started it last year. We did it through the hottest 2 weeks of July that there was. I participated in it as well, and it was so hot that some of what I was working with really kind of started to melt in the sun. And so, anyway, as we kind of met and did a little feedback on how to do that, we've now spread out that painting period from April to July. So we have artists coming on site. They come in early when the, morning sun is gorgeous, or they come in later, 5:30 in the afternoon when they're going to get into golden hour to paint. And that is to walk around and there's somebody with their easel set up and they're recording what they see, and it is timeless. You look at this work and it's timeless. It's not like my square terminal behind the little box here. It's truly what they're seeing out there is breathtaking. So,
I feel my shoulders dropping just thinking
see,
about the farm and just being there and relaxing and just enjoying it now. So, Julie, our listeners are hearing this podcast right now, not that much before Christmas. It's in the fall of 2025, but you and I are recording this in the spring. And the reason we did that was because, first of all, you're very, very busy, aren't you, in the fall and winter?
with the shop, yes, the shop gets moved from this log site where we are here, packed up and moved up and reset up as a new configuration up in the Ed Center. So yeah, it's a busy season then for sure. So glad we're touching base now.
We figured that we, after conversations with you, we knew that the fall is just so busy. But we wanted to make sure that people were able to really find out about the old time Christmas and be able to, book their tickets and buy their
Yes.
tickets and things like that. It's very important. But
Hmm.
the main thing is that there's events all year round. So
Yes.
when people hear this, go to the website, find out what's going on and get out there. We are going to go to the Fall Festival this year, and we will have already gone by the time people hear this
Yep.
podcast. But we really want to thank you for being on our podcast, for sharing about the
Absolutely.
wonderful work Quiet Valley Living Historical Farm is doing. And I couldn't recommend it more to people and
Oh,
families
thank you.
to go out there and visit you guys.
There is something new this year, kind of new to us, and I think it definitely deserves a nod here for sure. We have always had the Pocono State Craft Festival here on site. So it's a juried craft show. There are artisans here that do glasswork and do pottery and do this exquisite jewelry and paintings and photography and fiber arts. And it's amazing. And so they have always used our site here to set up. And through some changes that happened last year, we ended up being more than just the site where they're coming. Yes, they're still going to come here. And people have always assumed, oh, Quiet Valley does the craft festival. No, we just hosted it. They used our site, but now we're setting it up as well. So we've taken on that role of, doing the advertising and getting word out and getting information into the news media and visiting stations to do little blurbs and putting commercials together and things that we weren't part of before. So what people thought Quiet Valley does the craft festival before, it's still here. It's still going to be on this site, but yes, we are the backing of the advertising and the getting the word out there for it, and so that's not going to change. So if and that will be over too by the time people have seen this. So hopefully some people listening to this went, that's where we were at the craft festival. That place is great. And then they can come back for old time Christmas.
Absolutely. And then I'm sure you're going to be going strong in 2026. So it's going to be good. Whatever time of year it is, you guys are doing wonderful work. And I want to thank you, Julie,
Thank you.
thank you for being on our podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for interviewing.
You bet. And hopefully we will see you during the fall festival.
You better come in here and visit. Absolutely. I'll look forward to seeing you.
All right, Julie. Thanks again.
Sure. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your History, Your Story. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, X, and Instagram to stay connected. We'd love to hear from you, whether you have questions, comments, or a story to share. Until next time, be well and God bless.